Welcome to MadeToLast, conversations about marriage and family and parenting. And my name is Brian and my wife Stephanie. And so today, let's talk about just rekindling sex, romance in a relationship. Like, what do you think are keys just to rekindle? Let's say you go through a season and, y'all just feel disconnected sexually. You're on different pages. How does a couple try to reconnect and get back on the same page? What you think?
Oh, you're starting hard today. Okay. So I think you can do a couple of things. I think it takes both of us. I think the fact that we both recognize that our flame has kind of died down.
But what if the person, sometimes we don't even recognize, you know what I mean? Sometimes there's a disconnect sexual in a relationship, right? It could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be relational. I mean, it could be a health issue. Like how does a couple get to where they need to be, right? What you think?
Well, I think you got to acknowledge it first.
You got to acknowledge it.
And
So
if this was happening with us, and when this has happened with us, you acknowledge it.
That's right. I do. I say, hey, listen, let's get it together. Come on, team. But I think though too, I think a lot of men get into marriage with a high expectation of the sexual relationship, what it ought to be and how often and all that kind of stuff. But I do think a couple has to have that conversation, like what's realistic, what's healthy, what works for us. Because I do think more easier than not, it's easy to end up on the same, on different pages, right? I mean, you got to have that conversation, kind of talk it through.
Yeah, you got to have good, healthy sex communication, and I think your sex life will go through just different seasons.
Sure.
And so when our kids were really young, I'd say our sex life was on a low. Even though we had young kids and so on, it was on a low. And I think you just have to recognize what sex season that you're in.
Right.
And now I feel like no matter what my sex season was in, your sex season was always like, let's go.
I think, brothers, we this is how we wired. We ain't nasty. God just gave us a sex drive that we long to be fulfilled in a relationship.
Yeah,
but I think the tension, I didn't realize, like, breastfeeding takes away, it can lower sex drive. Sometimes you can be super tired. Sometimes y'all are just super busy. Sometimes you just, it's just
I don't
overlooked.
want to.
Right. And so I think the couple talking about it, working through it. But I think sometimes wives, I think both, it can be either person. So I don't want to generalize.
Yeah.
But I think there has to be some level of compromise on, what's going to work for us? How do we meet each other in the same place? Because it may not be 4 or 5 times a week.
Oh
right?
my gosh,
but it may not be one time. It may not be. But it may not be one.
Wait, hold on.
It may not be one.
If you're having sex 4 or 5 times a week, you need to teach a class, because
all I know is the couple need to talk about what's gonna work for them.
You're setting unrealistic expectations.
That's not unrealistic if that's what they want to do.
Well, I know it's unrealistic.
If that's what they want to do, then that's what they want to do. I just think every house got to figure out what works for us, and we gotta work together. I think both people got to work together. I don't think nobody ought to be able to say, well, that's too much. I think we got to work together. The other thing I have learned.
Okay. All right. So let's say
somebody say 4 and somebody says 2.
Okay, I feel like you should come to my 2.
But if they say in 5, you got to get to 3. That means somewhere in the middle.
All right. I feel you with the compromise, because I know I've compromised.
That's right.
And you've compromised.
That's right. I have.
Yeah.
All right.
He said
so the other thing, help me with this one. How is romance and sex connected together? I think for most brothers, we just think, why do you need all the extra? So tell me how, as a woman, how that's all connected.
I need to know that you have been thinking about me that day. I need to know that that little note, and it just really truly depends on your wife's or your spouse's love language.
Okay.
So whatever that spouse's love language is, and everybody's different. So what you think works for, that ex you had or whoever, that's not going to work on me. You got to know my love language. So, okay, babe, what's my love language?
All those things, they help lead to
They help me
more
lay it down.
sex.
So what helps me
But
lay
if
down?
I don't do all that, all
Yeah.
that stuff, all that's connected. It don't feel like it's connected. But I hear you. I understand. That's
Right.
what I've been taught. I've been taught that it all goes, the romance, that the sexual relationship doesn't start in the act, but it's a whole experience.
Right.
It starts from good morning, beautiful. It starts from the text. I was just thinking about you. It starts from, hey, I got your tank. You got gas in your car.
Oh, hey.
It starts
I'm feeling-
from, hey, the
I'm
bills,
feeling-
the lights
feeling
work.
sexy.
It starts. It starts
I'm
from,
feeling
hey,
like I
man,
wanna lay
do you
down.
need me to pick up the kids tonight?
Oh, come
It
on,
starts
talk
from
my
food.
language.
All that stuff is part of it.
Oh,
It all
you paid some bills?
goes together. It all goes together.
Yeah.
The kids are asleep. They
You
all
help
that
put 'em
stuff.
down.
It's crazy to me how all that relates.
It relates.
But it all goes together. That's helpful
where
because
I feel-
sometimes you forget that but it all relates. It all goes
Yes.
together. Yeah.
Because I feel like with you or with some men, y'all will, and you sisters, let me know in the chat. If I have worked out, I could feel my nastiest. I had like this nasty.
Men don't really need no
cold.
long
Y'all
round.
do not care.
Men don't need none of that.
I can smell. You do not care.
Men don't really care about that.
You're just
But
like, lay there.
it's good to know that y'all won't. Men, we pretty simple people.
Yes, you're very
Pretty
simple people. God bless
Now we
you.
like showers and all that. We like that, but we pretty simple. Pretty simple.
Now listen.
Parenthetically, let me
Now
mention
listen.
that's important. Hygiene. But we keep going. So
That's hygiene for y'all, too.
It's both
No,
from both
now
sides.
listen.
It's both sides. So here's the other piece I would say. So I think so what I mean, so there are seasons to this, right? Sometimes there are
Right.
health challenges.
Right.
Sometimes there's impotence. Sometimes there's a lot of body changes
We're over 50 now.
that can happen.
Well, I'm over 50.
Yeah. That can happen in the life of it. And I think too, illness, sickness.
Mhm.
I think one of the things about marriage in the sexual relationship is how important it is to know the relationship is so much more than that. It's an important part of it, but it's so much more than that. And how to love a partner through, some of those challenges, right? Some of those lean seasons, some of those, I think that's part of what too, right? Is that you having to love each other through those seasons. It's important, right? And so that's a big piece too.
And you know what? One thing I would say that I've learned we've been married 25 years. In this 25th year, this 25th year, one thing I've learned that's helped, I feel like that has helped us, the longer that we're together, the better we understand each other and we give each other grace. And I would say to any couple, whether you've been married 5 years, 10 years or less, give each other grace. If you have new babies, give each other grace. New job, new promotion, you're back in school, give each other grace.
That's so good. That is so good. It's so important. I mean, I think that's a big part of it. Even in the sexual relationship, is giving each other grace. I do. There's a scripture that says the better marriage.
He always goes take it to the Lord.
There's a scripture. It says the bed of marriage is undefiled. And what that literally says is it gives couples freedom in the relationship.
Now
Freedom.
that can be dangerous though.
Right. So I'm not saying, I think we do have to have some boundaries. I think it's healthy for couples to have boundaries. But I do think it allows couples to also be able to a freedom to enjoy each other's bodies. And so I think that's important. I think sex sometimes can get a bad reputation because the world has ripped it out of context and made it something to be abused, as opposed to it being understood that sex shows up in Genesis chapter 1. It shows up again in Genesis chapter 2 because it is a creation of God that is to be enjoyed in the marriage context. And so there is a freedom, there is a joy, there is a pleasure that couples have to embrace. because they ought to enjoy it. It ought to be fun. It ought to be experience. They ought to try new things. They ought to have some freedom and be able to embrace each other's bodies and enjoy one another. That doesn't mean bring pornography into the relationship or other things, but it does mean
you gotta be
that
careful
they ought to
with
enjoy
your
it.
freakery.
You do.
You gotta be careful what you introduce.
You have to be careful. Don't even need to go to strip clubs together. That doesn't mean we need. But we do need to. I do think that couples can embrace the freedom of enjoying each other because of how God has created and wired them.
So it's okay if because you have to think about, in this day and age of marriage, people have more access to porn. They have more access to freak toys, you name it. So you have to I think that's when that sexual communication comes in, because your freakery in your bedroom is completely different than my freakery. And I think that's why you have to have a communication.
Right. So you have to talk. I think there's freedom.
Because there's certain things that I'm just not going to do.
I think some things ought to be off limits, but I am saying I think there ought to be, I think pornography, I think going to strip clubs together, I think
threesomes,
toys, all that stuff is not healthy, right? That it doesn't honor the marriage, right? So those are things the world has tried to throw in. But I think in terms of a husband and wife enjoying each other's body and enjoying each other, they have freedom to be creative, to be flexible, to be however the Lord wants them. I think they ought to enjoy each other. They don't have to use the same position. I mean, I think they ought to enjoy each other's bodies.
Change it up.
Yeah, they ought to enjoy each other, man. So no, we're not going all the way over there.
Yeah.
But they ought to have the freedom. Open relationships. No, this is a committed husband and wife that are enjoying the sexual relationship that is a reflection of the relationship God has given them. So, listen, y'all, we this at the end of the day, I think couples have to rekindle it, connect it, find ways to continue to keep their fire alive. Understand there's so many things that want to pull them apart, and they have to protect it. It is vital. It's not the whole marriage, but it's an important. One writer says that sex is a thermometer for your marriage. That the sex life often speaks about where communication is, where connection is, where intimacy is. And so that's why it's something to be cultivated and connected. So the brother got to do his work. The sister got to do their work, do all their work, but make sure let's protect and build healthy, strong lives. So, man, listen, thank y'all for watching this episode of MadeToLast. We could talk all day on this, but hey, we just wanted to get you started.
We need a part 2 to it.
We wanted to give y'all thank y'all so much for watching MadeToLast. Another great episode. Man, you can like, share in the comments. Thanks again for watching MadeToLast.